The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. It sounds basic to say that since it's so many other people's favorite game, but it hit me like no other game did. I listened to the soundtrack recently while on a 3-hour road trip, and I was just thinking about Joel and Ellie, and it got me really emotional. Those emotions hit me like a truck when I least expected it. The game still affects me, and it hasn't stopped since I originally finished it. So when I beat The Last of Us Part 2, I started writing a tweet and realized I have too much to say on it, and I'd just rather make a review. I feel like I should warn you and say this isn't like my typical video. It's not gonna be crazy serious or anything, but I mainly made this video to review the game and elaborate my thoughts. It's been a month since the game came out. Sorry there, what I meant to say is it's been a month since the game came out, around the time of me beating it as well, so this is a fair spoiler warning. Also, I know the game is quite long, so you may have not finished it yet. Before I get into the story, I want to brush on the gameplay. It's fun. The first game's Achilles by far was the gameplay. It was fine, but it was missing something. It was just hide behind the cover and shoot people. That's about it. Now, The Last of Us Part 2 introduces so many things. The stealth is really good. Like goddamn, it's pretty good. Ellie having a knife of her own makes life so much easier since I don't have to craft shivs every 5 seconds. There's also dogs, and they're annoying as shit, but they give you the incentive to get off your ass every once in a while. Even small things like the bow and arrow being vastly improved now that the aiming isn't total dog shit. Oh yeah, there's dodging. Thank the Lord. Now you can go prone and jump. They may be little things, but when they all add up, it creates so many unique combat scenarios that you can be playing the same encounter 10 times and have it go completely different every time. Although the combat is only fun when you're fighting humans. I dreaded fighting infected about the entire game because there's no strategy. I find you either sneak around them or shoot them. It all feels black and white and I hate it. The AI isn't also that good for them either. It just makes them feel like shamblers and they don't really feel any threat at all. They also have PPs and girl PPs. That's not important at all, I just feel like that's pointed out. Seriously, Neil, what the hell? That's kinda all there is to say about the gameplay though. Besides combat, it's just a lot of walking and talking and the occasional running away from something or solving puzzles, which are so boring I only did the mandatory ones. But yeah, that's about it for gameplay. It's a huge improvement over the first, but it still ends up feeling lackluster in certain areas. Now, you've probably seen all the articles about the game's user score or the overall hatred of the game, and that's mainly for one reason. But Joel is the hero of the first game, and he died like a bitch. Now, as Daddy One-Up always says, your opinion matters. But in this case, it doesn't. You're a fucking idiot, and it shows. If you think The Last of Us is a story about good and evil, then you are dumb. I'm sorry, Joel is a shit person, and he was never a hero. Shit, I love Joel to death, but he had his death coming, and he deserved worse in my opinion. Was I happy when Joel died? No, but I never doubted the fact that he had it coming for a second. People also like to say that it's stupid because Joel let his guard down when that was a natural part of his development in the first game. At the beginning, he's a tough smuggler. He never brings up his past, and he's only in it for himself. By the end, he openly talks about Sarah and looks out and cares for Ellie. Hell, even in the museum section in this game, it shows Joel has let his guard down even more. He's softer and seems a lot more like his old pre-outbreak self. Let's say you were in Joel's situation. Your daughter died and you haven't been the same since, but now you have a surrogate daughter and your fatherly instincts start to make a return. Not only would you go back to how you were, you'd probably not even notice. Some people really forget that these characters may be fictional, but they're written in a way to be as real and as human as possible. So when Joel enters the basement of doom, is it really that hard to understand why his guard may have been down? Especially if the person who was letting them stay there for shelter just fought alongside him to save their lives with him and Tommy? No, I don't think so. And yeah, sure, you can say that he died like a bitch, but what you fail to understand is that this is meant to be our world. There are no infinity gauntlet snaps or force powers to die by. There's no glory in the way you go out. You just die, plain and simple. Another reason people seemingly hate the game is the fact that Ellie is a lesbian and Abby's a buff! And if that's why you hate the game, then go fuck yourself! Funny thing is, an actual problem with the game isn't talked nearly as much. Pacing is shit, yo. I don't know how to say this, but I hate the pacing. It would be done horribly in any other way, and it just sucks. Usually I go through video games very quickly, but this time I wanted to savor my experience. I trucked through the first game in a day and a half, but this time I wanted my experience to count. The game is split up into days, so when I was playing as Ellie, every real-life day I would do a day in the game, the subsequent flashback, and then be done for a day. By the time day 3 rolled around, however, the momentum was going strong. We were getting to Abby and we killed the fuckers who bonked Dad on the head. And Abby shows up, kills Jesse, and the momentum is at an all-time high. And then we cut back to day 1 and play as Abby. It's really weird because Abby's route is amazing at making you feel like shit for what he did in both games. Like, at the end of the first game, I didn't even fucking hesitate to kill every doctor in the hospital without a second thought. So when we cut back to Abby and see that you murdered her father in cold blood, yeah, it really starts to fuck with you. Even the little stuff like the guard dog, Alice. But you play as Ellie and Abby for a total of 12 hours. Doesn't sound that bad, right? Well, I meant 12 hours each. I like Abby's route, but the fact that the game decided to stop the momentum dead just made me lose interest. I went over a week without even touching the game during Abby's route, and I don't think it helps either that I don't know who Abby is in comparison to the fact how I watched Ellie grew up in the first game. Now, that's nothing against part 2, that's a personal thing that I wouldn't count as a flaw. Some people say that you should have had 2 routes simultaneously with you switching after every day, but I think that would not work at all. I kinda like that you're playing as Ellie for 12 hours, you really get in the zone, and you're killing non-stop, and then once you get to Abby's route, it forces you to take a step back and say, holy shit, like, the amount of times I see something or someone recognize something from Ellie's route, even small things like Abby turning on the power on day 2, being mentioned in Ellie's day 2 by a random NPC. Even the momentum slows down and I got real bored. By day 3 of Abby's route, I was really motivated to get back to the theater even though I knew something bad was gonna happen. Anyways, let's talk about that ending. First of all, the last 3 hours of the game are beautiful. I know people think the ending sucks, and I know people think the ending in both games suck. And to be honest, the ending for The Last of Us 2 confused me at first. I thought it was good, but I knew it was missing something. When Ellie was drowning Abby and it cut back to Joel, I didn't really understand why that was. It perfectly illustrates how losing Joel, Ellie loses herself. Naughty Dog, this is a video game, but I should not have cried, but I do think the ending would have been better if Ellie killed Abby. I know the theme is that revenge is bad, and I'm not one of those people who thinks Ellie is a good person and kills Abby because she's a bad person. But I think it would have illustrated the theme better if Ellie actually took revenge and then she went home to the empty farm. I liked Abby by the end of the game, but I think both things I just mentioned would have hit harder with a dead Abby. But for the people who say nothing was accomplished by the end, I hear you, and I understand you. Both Ellie and Abby accomplished nothing, but an amazing story was told, and I think that's an accomplishment on its own. By that logic, nothing was accomplished in the first game either, but y'all want to choose to ignore that, huh? Anyways, about the conclusion, is The Last of Us Part 2 better than the first game? No, not even close. However, this game is beautifully crafted in every way. It's probably got some of the best acting in any game I've ever played, and those graphics are amazing. This isn't my favorite game of the generation, but it's definitely my game of the year for 2020. But please, if you're gonna criticize the game, at least be smart about it. It's not rocket science, guys, it's just a video game. Man, this video was one of a kind. It wasn't funny or heavily edited as the last video, but I needed to get my thoughts on the game out there in a way I was happy with. I love this series and I've held on talking about it until now, so, bye! Oh yeah, I actually never played this game.